In this video, I'm going to show you how to replace the lower control arm on this Hyundai Sonata. After this job, it is recommended that you get an alignment on the vehicle. Let's get started. Use a 21mm socket, remove all 5 lug nuts, and then we can pull the wheel off. Just a little note, if yours has hubcaps, when you take the lug nuts off, the hubcap is going to want to come off, so take that off first, then the wheel. Looking a little bit further down, you'll see the bolt that holds the strut fork onto the control arm. This is a 19mm headed nut. The bolt is also a 19mm headed bolt, so take a wrench and a socket and loosen all this up and we'll drive the bolt out. The bolt spins, which is great. Sometimes they get seized in there. Punch the bolt out. Let's disconnect the lower ball joint from the control arm now. This for me is a 22mm mounting nut. Typically, if you still have the factory ball joint, it should be a 21. Whatever it is for you, remove it. There's also a washer usually, or the mounting nut might have a washer built into it. We're going to need to pry down on the control arm in order to separate this, and typically I wouldn't want to hammer on an aluminum component to break it free, but because we're replacing it, it doesn't really matter. So hit this with a hammer and pry down at the same time with a pry bar till this breaks free. All right. The forward bolt for this lower control arm, you can access right through the cutout on this shield. There's a mounting nut on top that we'll have to hold with a wrench while we undo the bolt. Use a 19mm wrench on top on the nut and a 19mm socket on the bolt head. Take this out. The rearward bolt you can see going sideways through the frame. This right here is the transmission, and it is somewhat in the way of us pulling this bolt out. All we have to do is put a little bit of pressure on it with a jack, and that will allow us to slide this bolt straight out because that corner will be in the way. Because I'm on a lift, I'm using a pull jack, but if you're on the ground, just use a floor jack with a piece of wood or a piece of rubber, whatever. You have that soft in between the jack and the transmission so you can prevent damage. And all you have to do is put a little bit of upwards pressure on it. The rubber mounts will stretch a little bit and will allow you to get the clearance you need. There is a nut on the other side which is spinning, so let's hold that with a 19mm wrench. Tap the bolt through. There it is. Pry the control arm out. And there it is. Take the new control arm, line it up with the subframe. Use a rubber mallet to drive it in. Okay, I got the rear bolt lined up. Let's send it through before it moves, then we'll take care of the front. It went in most of the way. Here's a trick to get it in the rest of the way. Use a socket with a long extension, pry, and that's going to move the bushing in the direction that you need it to. For me, the top needs to lean backwards. That's going to pop it right in. Perfect. Put the mounting nut on top. Now this one, we can tighten and torque right now. It doesn't have to be at ride height. However, the rear bolt, because it needs to be at ride height so the bushing doesn't get torn up prematurely, I'm going to wait to tighten that until we put some pressure on this control arm. Hold the nut, tighten the bolt. Torque this to 110 foot-pounds. I'm going to try to torque the mounting nut side. That way I don't get any friction from the bolt going through, altering the torque reading on my torque wrench. But if you can't torque the nut, that's okay. 110 foot-pounds on the bolt. Looks like my bolt is spinning, so I have to hold it in place. All right, that's 110 right there. Make sure that the control arm is pushed up, pretty much even, parallel with the ground. This is ride height. I know the strut isn't connected yet. That's okay. I want to tighten up that rear bushing now, and then we will bring it back down, put the strut on, and do the rest. But it's a whole lot easier to torque that right now without the strut connected. This is the view from the back side of that bolt. It's the only place that I can fit my torque wrench, which works out perfectly because this is the mounting nut side. I put the mounting nut on, let's snug it up and then torque it. Same torque as the front, 110 foot-pounds. It's okay to squish that boot a little bit so you can get your tool on here. Perfect. My bolt didn't spin, so no need to hold it. That's torqued. I'm going to remove my support now off the transmission. Now use a pry bar, stick it right between where the aluminum meets the metal part of the control arm. That way you can pry this down a lot more easily. And put the ball joint back in. Careful as you do this so you don't separate your CV axle joint. The axle is still attached. And there we go. Perfect. Mine had a washer, so I'm going to put that back, and then the mounting nut. Let's snug this up. The torque on this is going to be 87 foot-pounds. That's it right there. If you have a castle nut with a cotter pin, you want to continue tightening to line up the slot and then put the cotter pin in and bend it over. I have a neoprene locking nut, so I'm all set right here. Pry down on the knuckle. Try to line up the strut fork with the lower control arm. Once you have it lined up, put the bolt through. All right, thread on the mounting nut, but don't tighten everything yet. This needs to be torqued at ride height, so let's put some pressure on the lower control arm, push it up at approximately ride height where it's almost parallel with the ground, then we can fully tighten this. I have a jack here with a piece of rubber so I don't damage the control arm. I'm gonna raise this up a little bit, approximately at ride height. That's gonna put this bushing in a spot where it's not going to be under tension if we tighten it as the vehicle is driving down the road. Snug this up. 110 foot-pounds for this bolt. Now lower your support. Let's get the wheel back on. If your wheels had hubcaps, you're going to want to put them on now because the lug nuts go over and clamp everything together. Just make sure you line up the cutout for the valve stem with the valve stem, of course, otherwise it won't fit on properly. And now start in all 5 of your lug nuts. We'll bottom them out and torque them to 79 foot-pounds in a cross pattern to seat the wheel properly. Once again, 79 foot-pounds in a cross pattern. Double check them. At this point, take it for a road test and don't forget to get in alignment.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.